Hello everyone, thanks for joining as ever. If any of you didn't know, you're welcome to keep videos on throughout, just stay muted so that we don't have too much background noise, whatever you prefer. So we're delighted to have Sunil Sharma representing the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth and Mrs. Helen Grant MP with us today. Sunil Sharma is the Chief Operating Officer at the CFOC and is a financier and entrepreneur who works closely with the Conservative Party. Helen Grant has been MP for Maidstone in the Weald since 2010 and was appointed Minister for Justice in 2012 and Minister for Women and Equalities from 2012 to 14. Throughout her career, Grant has been a strong advocate for ethnic diversity and gender equality. She's also the UK Trade Envoy to Nigeria. So thank you so much for coming along today. Do you want to just tell us a bit about the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth and the kind of work that you do?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, Annabelle. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, and I want to start by saying it's great to see many of you here today. I really hope you enjoy our discussion, and due to the climate, it's unfortunate that we're having to do this virtually as opposed to a physical. But hopefully at some point, we'll be able to deliver this in person. It's been a unique year for us all. We've obviously all had to make adjustments to our everyday lives, and at Conservative Friends of Commonwealth, we've had to adapt now that we never thought we would have to. However, through these challenges and difficulties, we have been able to find new methods of getting our message out there to the public. And I'll go into more detail about our organisation shortly after. But first, I wanted to talk about our parliamentary chair, Helen Grant, as I know one of the things that we're going to discuss today is diversity. Helen obviously was the first Black woman of mixed heritage to be elected as a Conservative MP, and that is an incredible feat. But I think those words don't do it justice enough. I think for decades we know of the term shy Conservative, where often people are afraid to say that they're Conservative or voting Tory, and you could begin to argue now with social media and council culture, it's almost re-emerging again. But I think being a shy Conservative is even more apparent in ethnic minority groups. You look at the two people here talking, me of Indian descent and Helen, a Black woman, are two people, when you look at us, a few years ago, you would say are not your typical Conservatives. And I often say when we do a lot of these events, that the ideology that your skin color should determine how you think or feel is almost more racist than any sort of racial slur. And in your own community, it's almost a form of mental slavery. So I think it's important. We need ethnic minorities, BAME people who are not afraid to think differently. We need ethnic minorities who are more socially liberal, but we also need ones that are more traditional. We need ethnic minorities to hold right-wing economic ideas as well as left-wing. Not every ethnic minority or BME person we see today has to prescribe to be on the left or in the center, and skin color shouldn't determine that. And that's why people like Helen are so important. She's the reason people like me are able to talk so freely about Conservatives. She is one of the reasons we have one of the most ethnic diverse cabinets in history and in the world. I've been involved in politics since the age of 13, helping my dad, who was a local councillor, and look at my role today in the Commonwealth. And you do get the odd sort of hate emails and messages about how you can be Indian and still Conservative. And I often do think of Helen, who's someone who's in a much more substantially prominent role to me, someone who came into office in 2010. And I think of all the emails and messages and letters and criticism she would have received, often probably from people with the same background, with the same skin color. And she still had the perseverance to say, no, my skin color doesn't determine how I should think. And to have that determination and attitude is incredible, and we should celebrate that and be grateful for it, because like I said, it's people like her that enable people like me, and I'm sure many people on this chat to speak as how freely we want to. So on that note, I'll pass it over to
Hello, I can't hear. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me? Well, Sunil, thank you very much indeed for those lovely, kind words. I have to say you were making me blush a little bit, but that is so lovely of you to say what you said. And just before I start, I have to tell you all, I I should have been at an association event tonight with my association chair. And I don't know whether any of you are in a Conservative associations at home, but you know, she was best pleased that I wasn't going to be there until I told her what I was doing in addressing the Oxford Conservative Association event tonight. And she actually said, wow, Helen, she says, that's absolutely great. You're probably going to be addressing a future Prime Minister. So I have to tell you, there's no pressure there, guys, but she was suitably impressed, and so am I. I'm delighted to be with you tonight and to be talking to you about my journey into politics. I guess my journey into politics started fairly late. I'd been a family lawyer for 23 years prior to getting involved. I loved my profession enormously. But you might not be there yet, but sometimes you do get to a stage in life where you need a change and you need a new set of challenges. And I got to that point by around 2005, 2006. And at about the same time, David Cameron had just become leader of the Conservative Party, big time of change for us. And he started to really reach out, and he started talking about the need within our party to address gender and diversity imbalances. He started to talk about compassionate conservatism and really sent out messages of hope and change. So I was really taken by David, wanted to be a part of his team, applied to be a candidate. And to cut a very long story short, I became the prospective parliamentary candidate for Maidstone and the Weald. And in 2010, I was fortunate enough to take over from Anne Widdecombe. And I became, as Sunil mentioned, the very first Black female Conservative MP. I've been at Westminster an MP for 10 years now. And it really is a pretty special place. And I have seen some very positive changes during that time in terms of gender and diversity balance. Now 34% of MPs are female. It was only 22% when I came in. Now 10% of MPs are from a diverse ethnic background. When I came in, that figure was only 4%. So we are seeing some changes. I think on the plus side, of course, we have more women in Parliament than ever before, and more women on our benches. We've had 2 female prime ministers, both of them Conservative. We've got women leading power select committees, women as Home Secretaries. And I believe when Boris Johnson first started his premiership, we had the most diverse cabinet ever. So there are some very good things happening, but still when I speak to women and people from diverse ethnic backgrounds, there are still concerns. And sometimes they candidly say to me that we're worried about getting involved because we feel that Parliament may well not be a place where we can achieve and progress and reach our full potential. Many women in particular are also concerned about online abuse. And I have to say, it's pretty awful. And people like Diane Abbott in the Labour Party get more online abuse than all the rest of us women right across the House, and she has a thoroughly awful time. I think voting hours, again, if you're a woman and you have small children and babies to take care of, it's not always that easy, because even on a Monday night we only start voting at 10 a.m. So again, if you've got little ones, it's a juggle and you need very, very good support. But having said that, I have no regrets whatsoever. I love being, I enjoy being a politician. But for those of you who are thinking about possibly doing it one day, my advice to you is that you need to go in very much with your eyes open, and you need to be prepared. In terms of encouraging more women and diverse people into politics, I would say that Organisations like conservative women's groups, CWO, Women to Win, some of you might have heard of, an Operation Black Vote, are excellent organisations. I didn't know anyone when I joined the Conservative Party. I really didn't. And those organisations introduced me to people. They got me networked up. I was worried about public speaking, and they, found opportunities for me to practice. And I really wouldn't be where I am today as a sitting MP without the support of that type of organisation. I also think female role models and diverse role models are important. How fantastic is it when we switch the telly on and we see people like Rishi Sunak, standing at that dispatch box and, speaking on to Andrew Marr. It's exactly what we need, because I think with these sorts of things, it's one thing for me to say you can do it and it's changing. It's another thing to actually see things with your own eyes. I also think we need to continue to send out messages of culture change at Westminster. And we can do that by robustly dealing with issues that worry people, like sexual harassment, sexual abuse, online abuse. And of course, we need to really work hard to stamp out racial and religious abuse in the form of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I would also say, some of this sounds a bit negative, but I wanted to be straight with you tonight. Once you do get there, and once you do get into politics, I have to say, for those that work hard and knuckle down, it's an amazing place, and there are many, many opportunities. I have been there 10 years, and I've served on 2 select committees. I've served as a Justice Minister, a Minister for Women and Equalities, and also Minister for Sport. Annabelle missed that one out. But I have to say, for anyone that loves sport, it is, take my word for it, the very best job in government. I've also very recently, as she mentioned, just become the Prime Minister's trade envoy to Nigeria. I'm half Nigerian, my father's Nigerian, and I'm very proud of my heritage, my British heritage and my Nigerian heritage. So of course, getting a position like that is a wonderful opportunity for me. But to summarise, I'm never bored. I love what I do. I have no regrets from my career change. And I would recommend pursuing a political career to anyone. I really would. It's a very special thing. It's a real opportunity to add value, to do good, to put back, to help people. I do think we've made some great progress, but we cannot afford to take our foot off the pedal, and we certainly are not quite there yet. We're not at a 50-50 parliament, but hopefully by the time, well, maybe in another 5 to 10 years, at least we will be. But I'm going to bring my comments to a close. I could talk for an awful lot longer, but I know Sunil has some more to say about the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, and I want to leave time as well, of course, for your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think it's really inspiring to hear about the amount of hard work that has to go into these kind of things. And as you say, thank you for being straight with us about it, because I'm sure, as you said, that it hasn't been easy at all. So thank you for that. And Sunil, I'll go back to you.
I'll keep my Conservative Friends of Commonwealth remark as short as possible. As Helen's highlighted about diversity, naturally with Conservative Friends of Commonwealth, the organisation that we are, we naturally, with countries like India, Pakistan, our African nations, it's a very diverse setup. And for us, the message is really, really simple. Our mission is almost in our name. We look to push forward the conservatism and the Commonwealth. The government has regularly spoke about a more global Britain, and few groups have the outreach or the values that the Commonwealth upholds. We have a population of 2.2 billion, a GDP expected to hit 13 trillion by the end of this year. It means that the Commonwealth does account for 32% of the world's population, and even more importantly, 13.6% of the global GDP. With Brexit and regular talk of the EU, it's worth noting that since Britain has joined the EU in 1973, the EU in total grew by 2% in GDP, whilst the Commonwealth clocked in at more than double with 4.4%. So, whilst we're not saying that the Commonwealth is a direct replacement for the EU, there is substantial potential that it offers. And the way we sort of do that at the organisation, we intend to push right from grassroots to parliamentary level, as we look to establish key relationships with government, as well as holding links with our Commonwealth partners. And one of the things we've been able to do is hold a number of events with key high-profile delegates from Canada and Australia and many more. Obviously, naturally, this year has been a bit different. It's almost impossible not to mention COVID-19 and its impact. And I'm sure there's many people here who've been either directly affected or know loved ones that have been. And if there was a need to show international cooperation, today's world shows that, and this virus shows that. And we've seen a number of Commonwealth countries being hurt by the virus, none other than ourselves in the UK. But whilst there is a crisis, there's always opportunity, and that opportunity is something that our organisation, has decided to really push forward with our positive messaging. Prior to COVID-19, we held a couple of events in Parliament where we discussed a number of different projects that we involved in, including polio eradication, with Conservative MP Bob Blackman and Lord Tariq Ahmed. And we're able to get some really valuable information on how various governments are working on projects and their plans to support the eradication of polio and other humanitarian issues. And it's been a pleasure being involved in those events, and hopefully we can return at some stage to physical events in the coming future. Some of the key people that we've spoken to in the last year is John Baird, who was a former Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Canadian government, Malcolm Turnbull, the former Australian Prime Minister, Robert Zulik, who served as an advisor for 6 US presidents, George Osborne, former Chancellor of Exchequer, Sir Linton Crosby, a political strategist, and most recently Dr. Luke Evans, who's caught a lot of the media attention with his new social media bill. A lot of these webinars have been really useful to our members and other people. It's all available on our YouTube channels, and it can be highlighted in our social media platforms. But going forward, towards the end of this year and the coming year, we intend to work closely with Helen as much as possible. We're pushing forward manifestos where we want to talk about key policies, and that's going to be a big part of our organization in 2021. We've expanded our team. We're holding more and more virtual webinars. We've started to broaden out of just instead of just political figures. We've got Andy Piley, who's a hugely successful businessman in the UK, owns a number of huge organizations, but is most well known as the Fleetwood Town FC owner. We've also got General Spalding from the United States. He served as one of the strategic planners in the White House, and a number of different other speakers that we'll be confirming in the coming weeks and months. But yeah, I want to close with everyone here who has an interest in the UK's well-being and its future, and we're seeing a lot of doom and gloom in society, and naturally with what's going on in terms of COVID, we offer as an organization there is positive outlets out there. After it's very hard not to, with what's going on, to be drawn down and be negative in terms of Brexit, in terms of the EU, and often it feels like when we tune into the media, it's just bad news. And it's important organizations like ourselves and other organizations out there that do fantastic work in pushing forward the positive message that this country offers. And obviously with us, we're a bit biased in terms of the Commonwealth, but that's a huge area which we believe that can offer a substantial amount of growth for this country. So I urge people to join into our virtual events, and if you do have a passion for the Commonwealth and the value that we offer, then always feel free to reach out to us on various different social media platforms.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there are quite a few members who'll be interested in either seeing what else you have to say or maybe getting involved. So thanks for advertising that to us. Are we good to start with the Q&A, or do you have any other kind of comments that you wanted to say? Great. Well, I have a load of questions, and if anybody else has other ones that kind of get thrown up by what Sunil and Helen say, just send them to me in the chat function. But I wanted to start by asking, do you think now that Brexit is going through and the Erasmus scheme is coming to an end, do you think that there'll be an increase in UK students studying abroad in Commonwealth countries rather than EU countries?
Sunil, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we saw one of the things Boris did was extend visas for India students. I believe there was 1 year and they moved it to 2 years. So I think there's definite opportunity there. And I think the fantastic thing with the Commonwealth going forward is we do share a lot of the same values. The belief in democracy is across pretty much all Commonwealth countries. And there is a fantastic opportunity, and there's no reason why we should be restricted to a block where no longer geography is as important as it was maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago. What we're doing today over a Zoom session like this shows that. And I think the opportunity for the Commonwealth in terms of students, in terms of picking the brightest and best students from across the world is more and more apparent, especially with countries that do share the same values as us, and especially with countries that have incredible educational systems. You know, Canada, Australia, India, and a number of different African countries. There are some fantastic students, and there's no reason why we can be restricted anymore in terms of a sort of a single trading block or a you know, one continent. You know, the events like this and platforms like this prove to us that more than ever the international potential that we have. And so I think with Erasmus ending and obviously Brexit around the corner now, I think it only offers and opens opportunities for all Commonwealth countries, to be honest.
Yeah, well, speaking of education, we have a question that's just popped up from Maddie Ross of Balliol College. Maddie,
can I just say on that as well? I think Sunil answered it beautifully, and I think, you know, anybody that comes in on a student visa, pretty much going forward, they are going to have to be the brightest and the best, and they'll be making great sacrifices, leaving their original country, coming over here and working, and they will be clever, bright, brilliant people. And I often think that, you know, there are possibly that there should be a way of that visa or that time being extended so that after the period of education has ended, we can hang on to that person for a bit longer to help us in this country, rather than, right, you've had your education, you've paid your fees, you've got your degree, and then they go back. And I do think perhaps that sometimes we've been over the years missing a trick, and if we were to be able to encourage and allow our clever overseas students who come here to stay a bit longer and work and make a life, I think that could be a great win for the UK.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, it's okay.
All right, Maddie, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, so with the current push for more education about empire and colonialism in schools, particularly in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that maintaining a positive image around the Commonwealth might become more difficult?
I think the Black Lives Matter movement has had a pretty incredible impact all over the world. It's become a global movement, and all of us will never forget, you know, the images of George Floyd, you know, dying in the street with a police officer's knee on his neck. Sadly, I think that whole movement confirms that, you know, racism actually does still exist, you know, above and below the radar. It might be a bit more subtle than it was when I was a little girl growing up in, you know, the north of England in the 60s and 70s. But it's very much alive and kicking, and we need to recognise it and call it out. And one of the good aspects of what has happened is that everybody has had to start to have a very serious look at themselves, whether it's governments, whether it's music companies, organisations, schools. And actually, I do think more Black history should be taught in school. It would not be a bad thing at all. I think it would be a very positive thing. There are so many fantastic stories to tell. And I also actually think that the fact that, you know, if we can reach out and re-engage with the Commonwealth, we already have a very special relationship with it. It's been there for years. And even just looking at Nigeria, which is a country that, you know, I'm getting to know an awful lot about. You know, we have a common language, common time zones, common legal system, and an intertwined culture. We already have so much that unites us and binds us. And I actually think a closer union between the UK and the Commonwealth is all part of that process of diversity and inclusion and dealing with bigotry that, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, still exists, and that needs to be called out whenever we see it or hear it or sense it. And that can be quite hard sometimes. It requires bravery, but, you know, we have to do it. We really do.
And going into the sort of British Empire comments, I think the Commonwealth, I think we have to almost be careful in the sense of not justify the British Empire or talk about its positives or negatives. The way we view it at the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, we may not liked every section of history or how we came about, but we're about, and we are here, and we can sit here and talk about things that happened 100 years ago, and, you know, look at how social norms were different maybe in the 1940s compared to 2020. But I think the main thing that we prescribe to the Commonwealth is, listen, we may not 100% be happy with the way it happened and what happened all those years ago, but we have a fantastic group of countries here who share the same values, who share the same interests. And for us, it seems almost foolish not to use that. Whether the way we were assembled and the way it happened, it may not have been the ideal way, and it may be lots of things that we can learn from that and to say that should not happen again in the future. But I think the most important thing is to look at the positiveness that it brings and the potential it brings, as opposed to analyzing every single bit of history that happened 80 to 90 years ago. So that's, I think, our sort of stance in terms of the Commonwealth. We understand some people may not like the way it was organized and the way it was grouped, and I don't think there was many empires, whether you look back 100 years or 200 years, that didn't do some not so good things. But I think we're here, this is the situation that we are in, and let's make the most of it. And as long as we share those same democratic values, then I don't see why not we can't push forward.
And I think, as Sunil said very well there, you know, there's so much going forward that we can do together, so much that we have in common, so many fantastic campaigns, you know, whether it be promoting democracy, free trade, rule of law, you know, human rights. These are all very important issues that I think in many ways unite us, which has to be a good thing. It's a really good question, actually.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask as well, is there a little bit of a worry that we're kind of falling into a trap of feeling quite superior in terms of our relations with the Commonwealth? Because we're Britain and we were, you know, the empire, the power of the empire, whereas actually we might gain more if we were perhaps less, almost patronizing, I guess, condescending, less secure in our own superiority.
I think all I can say to that is I can only give you a very personal response to that. As I said at the beginning, 3 weeks ago, I was made the Prime Minister's trade envoy to Nigeria, which is a Commonwealth country. And at the moment, I'm having lots of briefings. I'm meeting lots of governors. I hope to meet when I'm eventually able to travel over there, maybe President Buhari and some of the cabinet. And I think, you know, the Prime Minister has visited Africa, and Nigeria has visited African countries more than any other Prime Minister in modern times. He loves the continent, which includes Nigeria, and he wants the UK to be Nigeria's partner of choice. I have never heard any arrogance, any superiority in that request. And when I heard him giving a very passionate speech in January at an event called the UK Africa Investment Summit in London, There were many, many Commonwealth members there, many from African countries, and they loved what he had to say. There was no superiority. There was very much, you know, we have a lot in common. Can we do more together? We really want you. We want the UK to be your partner of choice. You know, don't forget us. We are going to reach out to you. And off the back of things like that came the appointment of people like me, who when I go there, and they hear my passion for the country and the desire for us to really get close and do more. I don't think they're seeing or feeling any superiority. They're seeing a woman who's proud of her British heritage, proud of her Nigerian heritage, and genuinely wanting us to do more together. So I've narrowed it down, but that's the only way I could probably give you a really accurate answer to that genuine concern. No, the boss is not coming out, in my opinion, with any superior stance, and I can promise you neither am I. It's very much, hey, you know, a strong and growing Nigeria partnered with a strong and growing UK will be, you know, a force for the good, and good for both countries, not just the UK, good for Nigeria as well.
And I completely agree with Helen. I think it's, you know, we have to be careful in the sense of, you know, we don't want to come across as patronizing, and we don't want those elements associated. But at the same time, we do want to be proud of being British. And there are some fantastic values that we uphold. And a lot of these Commonwealth countries share those same values. So you look at the India relations with Liz Truss, who was speaking to Indian ministers, I think just yesterday. I think we have to almost be careful in the sense of rather than just being patronizing, but also there is some fantastic values that Britain holds, and there is some fantastic work that we do on a humanitarian basis for a lot of these Commonwealth countries already. And you know, we're not superior, we're not enforcing ourselves onto these countries. It is very much an open relationship which benefits both countries. There's not a single country the UK will, in terms of Commonwealth-wise, will be going to in terms of this superior angle. You know, I'm obviously Indian of Indian descent, and you know, UK partnering with India benefits India, but it also benefits the UK. It's a two-way street, like in any sort of trade deal or any aspect of business or politics. They're only going to take a deal or only take an interest if they benefit too. So I think whilst we should be wary of the patronizing element, and at the same time, we should also be proud of what it means to be British.
Yeah, so I think that idea of, you know, increasing our partnerships, you know, of course, in terms of trade, but also in kind of sentiment between these countries is a really key thing. And Oma-san, I think, has some questions more specifically about the relationship that Britain has with Nigeria. If you want to ask that, Oma-san.
Hello, Helen. Hello, Sunil. Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah. At the moment, Nigeria's been in the news recently because of the protests and the issues that have been going on there, if you've been following the news. And I have a couple of questions on that matter. As an envoy who's going to be going to Nigeria very soon, what would the government say about the things that have been happening, the attacks on the protesters, the shooting of unarmed protesters in Lekki a few weeks ago? And what would the UK do, like in the British government, do to promote human rights in that sphere of influence, in addition to trade and
well, you know, yes, I think I just didn't hear the end bit of that, but I got the main sentiment to the question, which is, you know, the end SARS protests, and you know when it was going out on social media was, you know, were really worrying. They went all around the world, and you know, on the face of it, it was to do with, you know, police brutality, the need for reform, the need for change, and of course the Buhari government said, yes, we will make reforms, we will disband, and we will make the changes. But I think that there is a deeper issue behind this, or underlying it, and that is probably to do with the divisions between the young generation in Nigeria and the older generation. And you know, as you know, Nigeria is a very, you know, has a huge, half the population are under 30. Very young population, many of whom are Democrats, and they have high expectations in terms of the social contract between the government and the people. You know, they want governance, they want accountability in terms of public services. And that's what needs to be rectified at the moment, and that's what I think the government needs to respond to in Nigeria, not just the allegations of policing and police brutality. And it's not an easy one. I mean, you've already heard what, you know, Dominic Raab and others have already said about, you know, what's been going on, and we've been encouraging calm and peace and resolution. But it isn't an easy one. I guess I will find out even more when I go out there. But it's very sad. It's a worry. You know, Nigeria is a country with enormous potential, as I'm sure you know, the fastest growing economy in Africa, rich in natural and human resources, the most populous African nation. You know, growing middle class, so much going for it. But of course, there are some fundamental problems that need to be sorted out, and this is one of them. And I think this is what is underlying, or which has underlined, some of these protests that we've been seeing on the news. I'm afraid I haven't got a nice, easy answer for you yet. I've been in the job 3 weeks, and I haven't been able to work out really what that answer is. I'm working out what some of the questions are and why we are really where we are, and why this is happening. But in terms of an answer, what can we do? What do they do? How we can help? I don't know. But what I do think is important, and what I think we should be encouraging is education, encouraging people to vote, encouraging, you know, civic education. All of that needs to be, I think, underlined. But it isn't an easy one. Can I ask what your view is on it? What do you think the answer might be? Because as a young person, you are probably nearer in age to me. I don't know whether you have any Nigerian connections, but it would be interesting to know what you think.
Well, I do spend quite a lot of time in Nigeria. I grew up there initially, and I'm part Nigerian, so I do spend a lot of time there. I think, well, my idea of a solution is to persuade. You have to tell the government has to be told that it has to reform in that kind of way, and it has, even if it needs sanctions to encourage it, but that can be used. Well, for example, sanctions and a mixture of things like encouragement and like some tough love. But otherwise, I would say engagement is the way to go, because the UK does a lot of very good aid work in Nigeria from what I've seen and what I've heard. So engagement and a bit of like toughness at the same time has to be shown. Because, for example, the government sends a lot of money in aid over there, but you have to make it clear that you can't be accepting our money and not be willing to listen to our ideas in that kind of way on how to make things better. Mm-hmm. That's my view on that.
Thank you for that. Well, I will bear all of that in mind and keep you informed. When I've been there, I might have more of an idea on some other things that might be able to be done. But I think a lot of it is to do with people engaging in politics, young people engaging and embracing their democracy and being registered to vote and voting and understanding their civic and civil rights.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that is a really pressing issue. So I think it's really good to see discourse about it coming out. Another point that kind of is about how young people relate to the Commonwealth is, of course, it's tied up with the British Empire, but also the monarchy. And there are a lot of people questioning the relevance of the monarchy in Britain today. Do you think that having a monarchy is still something that benefits Britain? And if so, how do we make that a more popular view amongst younger people?
Sunil, do you want to do that? Oh, I mean, it's a difficult one for me because I really like the monarchy. But I'm not young. You know, you are the same age as my kids. We maybe should have my boys here who are in their early 20s. But I like the monarchy. I like the Queen. I think she's an incredible woman. You know, I really like Prince Charles. I've met him on several occasions, and I hope he's king. And so maybe I'm the wrong one to answer this question, because I think the senior royals do an enormous job, and I've only been in public life for 10 years. And that, you know, that is quite an experience. Your life does change. And I'm just a member of Parliament. She has been in public life with all of that accountability from the day she was born. And she, you know, she's never really set a foot wrong, from what I can see. But to have that constant pressure all of the time, never being able to say, well, I'm not doing it, you know, just leave me for a few months, I'm going off around the world. You know, it doesn't happen in the royal family. But Sunil, you know, what do you think? I think they have a great role to play, and I think they're quite an asset. I really do.
100%. I think the monarchy is pivotal. And obviously on the almost the emotional standpoint, I think it makes, you know, often you look at the media nowadays and stuff that I read, and there's always a question of what it means to be British. And I think one of the first things when someone says to me when I'm in different countries, and when you talk about British and being English, I think of the Queen. It's one of the first things I think about. And I think it's not just us as Brits. I think if you go abroad, it's similar as well. And so the emotional standpoint is definitely there. On the flip side, on the more pragmatic way, there are studies that show that there is a lot higher social trust when there are monarchies, and social trust is an important factor in sociology and in economics. So there's various studies that show how having a monarchy improves that social trust, which can help also promote cohesion. Various different studies have been shown into this, how often having that higher trust, there's also examples of being less corruption. So there's, I mean, I can go on all day and talk about the more sort of pragmatic reasons of why we should have a monarchy, in terms of, if you want to talk about the money they bring in through tourism, the money that the difference that it makes. But I like to go on the more sort of the more emotional standpoint, which for me is an important part of being British. And I think the word is incredible. And I think one of my favorite shows and series I like to watch is The Crown, and they got season 4 coming out this Sunday. And if you ever want to look at what the Queen has done and the importance and what she's done, the role that she's played, you watch that series. I think it documents it amazingly. You look at how she waned in Africa and Egypt, and you look at the difference, how she's had to deal with a number of different world events where, you know, us, you know, in government weren't able to solve, and she had the ability to. I mean, I think you can't overstate the work that she's done, and the consistency is just remarkable. So again, if you want to know why the Queen's important, watch The Crown. I think that will illustrate it perfectly. But look, there's so many different reasons why.
Can I just my own curiosity? Number one, just show of hands, who has watched The Crown? Yeah, so quite a few hands going up there. I'm just having a quick look. I can't see the others on. Oh, I see a hand going up there. Yeah, so a lot of people have watched The Crown. And again, just who values the monarchy? Do you, as young people, and you know, you're going to be the important ones, the really important ones, very, very soon. You're going to be picking up the baton. And although I said at the beginning, you know, my association chairman said, well, you know, there's likely to be a future prime minister there. There may well be in among us tonight. So, you know, do you value the monarchy, or do you think we shouldn't have it? What do you think?
Well, I have to say, at ALCA, you know, we are generally very pro-monarchist. You know, we have a lot of speeches about the divine right of kings even, and all that. So it is a little bit of preaching to the choir, but I think it's nice to hear you say it, because we get asked about it. You know, we campaign, or we have, you know, people come to our events and say, you know, how can you believe in this? And there really are, as you and Sunil just laid out, so many different arguments. And also funny that you should mention The Crown. I actually had one member of this call, who will remain nameless, message me saying, oh, I bet they'll talk about The Crown. So she's been proven right. Moving on from the monarchy, we have a question from Juan Davila of St. John's. Juan, if you want to ask.
Yes, so I wanted to speak about the Commonwealth and this sort of further integration or cooperation that England is doing with the Commonwealth, particularly when it comes to trade. One of the things that happened recently is Brexit, and now we're leaving Europe, and maybe we need to find other friends. Other speakers have spoke about this. So I wonder if the UK is just going to build another trading bloc around the Commonwealth, how do we avoid being in the same position where in 50 years we don't like this new trading bloc anymore?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd say, well, maybe in 50 years we might not feel we don't like the trading bloc. Maybe it will be a fantastic and ever-changing, almost like a living trading bloc. So, you know, it might not go wrong again the way, you know, we felt the EU wasn't working for us anymore. Yeah, I'm not really too sure what to say to that question. I think it's a very good thing that we are reaching out to the Commonwealth. We are reaching out in a number of directions. Of course, trade is in there. You know, we're looking to enter free trade agreements or even, you know, other types of economic partnership agreement. There might not be complete free trade agreements, but we want closer union. We want, you know, to make it easier to do business. And there's a lot, of course, that's, you know, happening certainly in Africa at the moment with the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's been delayed a little bit in terms of implementation because of COVID, but hopefully that will happen again in January, and that will mean there'll be a whole load more internal trade that happens within the continent, which I think will be good for us. It will be good for Africa. But I think it's not just about trade either. It's about other things that we can do together that are important for the world. Whether it's the empowerment of women and girls, whether it's, you know, human rights, the rule of law. There's all sorts of different things that we can do with that ever growing closer union. Sunil, do you want to chip in there?
I think it's important to say that the Commonwealth isn't a replacement for the EU. I don't. They're two different things. And I think it's important that we do learn from the mistakes and what people didn't like about the EU when we go forward in terms of, we've discussed bigger blocks. And I don't think we should necessarily look at in terms of a block. There's a very big difference between having trade deals and helping in humanitarian issues in Commonwealth countries, as opposed to being part of an organization like the EU. So there's I think we look at the economic potential benefits. That's an important side of it. And like I said, it's important that we do learn from the EU and things that people didn't like about the EU in terms of the almost forced integration a lot of people felt with the EU, and allowing countries to have that sense of independence. So there's no, you know, us doing work in China or us doing work in Nigeria or in India doesn't automatically mean that, you know, we're part of a bloc and they subscribe to the same laws and they subscribe to the same policies that we enforce. It just means that, you know what, we share some good values, and we both believe in democracy, and we both believe in making a difference, and we both held similar traditions. So let's use those. That doesn't for a minute subscribe to the same idea of being in the European Union. We are bounded by a lot more than just that. So I think it's an important question in terms of for us and for the government to look at, in terms of, we almost don't want to be in that same situation that we've been in today, in terms of learning from the lessons from the EU, but also to acknowledge the fact that the Commonwealth isn't a replacement for the European Union. They're two very different things with very different messages, with very different things to offer, and a very different goal. And at the end of the day, if it means improving other countries' lives and improving our country life and ultimately in a beneficial way, and allowing countries to be independent and to feel independent, which we've seen as a very important part and a very important aspect. I think that's more important than necessarily having strict or rigid blocks.
Okay, thank you very much for both of your answers. I particularly enjoyed this description of trade as this living thing. I'm certainly going to go and give that another thought and how.
Really good. What's your view? What?
I think also it's very important. It's very I maybe take the opposite approach of I really think that big trading blocks and are generically the way to go because they seem to be the best for everyone involved. So I'm also very happy that the UK is reaching out to the Commonwealth. I just would have hoped that they could reach out to both and not have to sort of shut the door behind as you leave. But that's my view.
Okay, thank you, Juan.
Yeah, thanks for that, Juan. I now have a question for you, Helen, specifically. You've done a lot of work on the domestic violence bill. Of course, there have been a lot of serious concerns about domestic violence levels rising because of the COVID lockdown. Do you think that the government has done enough to support victims? And do you think that if not, it's heading in the right direction?
I was a legal aid family lawyer, as I said at the beginning, for 23 years prior to entering politics. And for a large proportion of that time, I focused on domestic violence and child abuse work. So I've taken many victims of violence to court to obtain non-molestation orders, occupation orders, to make people safe. The youngest person that I had to get an order for was a little baby. The oldest person I had to get an order for was a 95-year-old woman who was being abused by her alcoholic son. And when I was Justice Minister, I was also Victims Minister as well. And I also always think, we have got to do everything we possibly can to look after victims, to allow them to as well be able to move on with their life, to make sure they get all the support and help they need and deserve, and as well for perpetrators to face justice, to be accountable. And certainly during my time as Justice Minister, I know we opened a lot of rape centres, rape support centres, and we certainly have far more laws, useful legislation, and I think the domestic violence bill is a good one. We have certainly far more laws and organisations to support victims of violence now than we did, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, certainly 50 years ago. So I do think it's going in the right direction. I think the bill is a good bill. It makes some important definitions. It gives some more protections to victims. But at the end of the day, people have to stop, and it's usually men beating women up. When I say things like that in the past, it's usually somebody that says, but men are beaten up too. Yes, that's true. And I've represented many men who have been beaten up by partners who are other men, and sometimes by women. But on the whole, it's men beating up women. And we've got to stop doing this. But we have got to look after women. We've got and other victims. We've got to support them. We've got to protect them. I think there's a lot there. We've just got to make sure that that continues, and I think it will. But we've also got to make sure that perpetrators face the music and they are punished, and they do go to prison where there's been serious abuse, actual harm. But it's a very worrying area for me. I've seen it at the coalface. I've seen it in government, and it certainly is a priority for this government.
Thank you.
What's your feeling? What's your feeling on it, Annabelle? Do you think we're doing enough, or do you think we need to do more?
I have been following the bill, and also a few of the things that are sort of shot off from the side. So like when we had the rail to refuge system come in with free train travel for people sort of fleeing domestic violence. So I've been following things like that, and I think just having more of a conversation about it is always a positive thing. But one thing I'm glad that you approached it from the side of both protecting victims and ensuring, as an ex-Justice Minister, that justice for kind of perpetrators. Both of these are a key thing, that it's not just sort of, of course we have to protect them, but not really committing to the actual justice that victims are seeking. So yeah, thank you for that. I think we've just got time for, oh, sorry, go on.
No, that's absolutely fine.
I think we've just got time for one more question. So I think I'm going to go to Adam for this one, Adam James of Hertford College.
Hi, thank you both so much for your talk. It's been really, really interesting. I was just wondering, why do you think that despite the increasing representation of women and BME people in the top roles in the Conservative Party, why do you think that the Tories are still seen by many to be anti-diversity? And what do you think is the best way to kind of change those perceptions and encourage some of the shy Tories that Sunil mentioned earlier to be proud of their political beliefs and of the party?
Well, I think, as Sunil said at the beginning, look at the pair of us here tonight, and we are both diverse. He's a rising star to watch. I've held senior positions in government and the Prime Minister's trade envoy, and we are certainly more diverse as a party than we've ever been before in terms of gender balance and diversity. We've got Priti Patel as the Home Secretary, we've got Rishi Sunak as the Chancellor. And we've had 2 female prime ministers, both Conservative. So I think we are going in the right direction. But of course we need more, and I think that sometimes I have frustrating conversations with people when I talk about diversity and inclusion, and they say things to me. Well, why is it important at the end of the day? Just let it go. Just it's not too bad. And I often say, but diversity and inclusion is important. You've got to have balance, because without it, the talents and opinions and skills of a considerable and significant group of people are not being utilised, and they're not being recognised. That in turn, if you let that continue, that will then go on to skew policy and decision making. And if that continues, that will lead definitely, and it's happened, lead to catastrophic and costly mistakes being made socially, politically, economically, and commercially. So I think in our party, we are an awful lot better than we were, but we can't take our foot off the pedal because we're still not there, definitely not. And it's really, really important. And I think, when people talk to you about this, I think you've just got to press that message, Adam, and say, we need balance. We made progress. I think you can be proud of many of our achievements, and seeing is believing with Rishi and Priti there, and Margaret Thatcher and, Theresa May. The Labour Party haven't had any female prime ministers. So, there's a lot to be proud of. But I don't think we can sit back on our laurels, and I think we have definitely got to keep the pressure on. Sunil?
I totally agree with Helen. The proof is there. You look at the cabinet, and often we sometimes you look at people say, oh, they've been chosen because of that they want to show that they're diverse. And I think you look at the people in the roles, you look at Helen with her formidable achievements and record, that's someone who deserves to be where she is, regardless of her skin color. But it's important that we have people like Helen, like Rishi Sunak, and these guys are inspirations for anyone who's an ethnic minority or in any sort of aspect of diversity. I look at it on the other side of the fence too. I do a lot of media appearances on BBC Asian Network, and one of the big things why I enjoy going on that platform is I look at my own community, and I often look at other Indians, and I often speak to them, and I can see that they actually hold many conservative values. They believe in capitalism, they believe in free markets, they believe in a lot of things that you would say. They believe in low taxes, they believe in a lot of conservative values, but they are almost too scared to say that they are conservative. They're too scared to put a tweet that they're going to be voting for Boris. They're too scared from their own communities to make those sort of statements. So I think it's important that we reduce that stigma. in terms of you can be conservative and you can be an ethnic minority. You can be a woman and be conservative. You can be anything that you want to be and be conservative. So I think that's an important aspect. And people like Helen, Rishi, these guys, they make it more and more easier for people like me, for example, to be as open as I am and say how pro-conservative I am. And that's so important. You can't really undervalue how important that is. And I think, yeah, I look at it in terms of my community, my sort of background, and I often would just say, voice your opinion. There's nothing wrong with saying, one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Priti Patel, I don't agree with every single policy that she upholds, but there's a lot of things that you look at Priti Patel, she should not be saying in terms of media-wise, in terms of what we've been taught as a woman to hold the values that she holds as an ethnic minority, as an Indian. She should be more. We tend to be more prescribed. We should be in the middle. We should sit on the fence a bit more. We should be a bit more left-leaning. And you need people like Priti Patel who's prepared to say, no, this is what I believe in. I don't care if it's not one of her biggest criticism, if you look at through statistics, she gets more criticism from her own community percentage-wise than from so if you like, from non-Indians, she gets less criticism. So she gets more criticism from Indians than she does from the other side of the fence. And a lot of that is just about education and having people like that who are not afraid to voice their opinion and are so passionate about what they believe in. And I think that only helps and promotes. So I think having the conversation is important. I think that's where it really stems down to, having that conversation and having younger people who are not afraid to voice what they believe in. There's diverse people in this group, and it's great to see, like, having that passion and not being afraid. I think they're the things I think that we need to change. And as a party, you could always argue that there's more work we need to be done in terms of branding, like Helen's listed all those amazing things that we've done, and we probably don't brand it as much or shout as much. 2 women prime ministers, they've both only ever been conservative, the most diverse cabinet in history. We probably don't shout about it enough, and we probably don't talk about it enough, and there's more work to be done. But I think starting with the open conversation, having the open mind is, I think, the key.
Well, thank you for that great last question, Adam. And of course, thank you to Helen and Sunil for your answers. I think that's a really good point to end on. Again, thank you so much for coming along. And we're really sorry that lockdown thwarted one of our few in-person events planned for the term. I know I was really excited for it, but when things are a little bit more normal, would be really happy to have you back face to face this time. So yeah, but all the best for all this important and sound quite difficult work that you're doing. And yeah, thank you so much again for coming.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been lovely to talk to you all tonight. And yes, if there's an opportunity to actually come over to Oxford to see you, it would be marvellous. But stay safe, keep up the great work. And if you think Sunil or I can help you in any way, then email us, drop us a line, send us a tweet. But we'll keep going, we'll keep working, and I hope to meet some of you in person in the not too distant future. So thank you for having us.
And thank you everyone for coming, of course, and giving up your part of your Friday. So thanks very much. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.